Okay, about half of you have a Learn profile, and about half of you have done the course. So thank you for joining me this afternoon. For those people who joined, I'm sorry if there was a mix-up. Yes, it started at 4, not at 3:30. The presentation this afternoon is all about 21st century learning design based on Microsoft's framework, and this is preparation for the Microsoft certified exam, which you have the option to do through kind sponsorship of Microsoft. Have given me vouchers that teachers from Africa can use to write the exam, and I'm able to facilitate that through Certiport. I will be talking and explaining that at the end of the presentation. It is a whole lot of information to get through. You will, you're welcome to take notes. I'm going to show you where on the website you can find the information, a lot of the information we're talking about. So if you go to this website called Learning Curve IT, and I'm going to pop it in the chat. Sorry, if I look, I'm just looking to the right. You're welcome to join the forum and become part of the members. In this on this website, if you're interested in writing the exam, there was a form to fill in that you can fill in to complete the forms. And then I'm just going to paste that in the chat. So if you are interested in any of the vouchers and you haven't already done so, you can fill in the Microsoft form. On this same page, you can either follow the link to Microsoft Certified Educator, or you can go to the Growth Hub Microsoft Certified Educator page. I just want to confirm that everybody can see me, hear me, and see my screen. If you could just give me a thumbs up or a say in the chat. Okay. So all the information that is on this website. The course is based on this 21st century learning design framework designed by Microsoft. If you follow the link from the website, it will take you to the course in Microsoft's Learn platform. So Microsoft Learn is a platform run by Microsoft, which contains all the training material. It is not specific to teachers only. It actually covers anybody who uses Microsoft products. It contains all their training materials. So this course, at the end of today, I'm going to give you the achievement code, and you will be able to redeem it. That will make this course go green, that you have done all the different modules. But all the information that I'm presenting today is found on this website. You can go through each page. There are videos, some of which I'm going to show you today, but there are more videos. The knowledge check that you do at the end of the course, however, is not similar to the exam. It is more about confirming that you have read what is in the unit than what is in the exam. Today in the presentation for each area, I'm going to give you examples of how it is asked in the exam on Certiport for you to see what it looks like. So if you're on this website and you go down, there are further instructions on being how to take a Certiport exam, which should you choose to write the exam online, you will need to go through this document. And the presentation that I've done, there's one for each learning rubric, and so they detailed, and you can download the PDF, and you can download Microsoft's decision trees. And then after today, these are last year's courses, but I will load today's one and remove last year's. This gentleman's video is very good if you're planning on taking the exam. I would suggest that you go through it because he shows you more questions. He also gives you tips and tricks on how to answer the exam. If you are doing the exam, I suggest that you do the learning pathway, or at least if you haven't done it already, use it to go through and extend your knowledge of what I say today. If you've done it already, then my workshop this afternoon hopefully cements your knowledge. Please, I have changed it so the microphones can be on. If you have something that you need to ask, if you can pop it in the chat, but sometimes, and that's why I keep looking right, you might, I might miss it. Bronwyn is there. Thank you, Bronwyn. She's always my go-to person to post in the chat for me, and she will try and help you out. Otherwise, put your microphone on and ask the question. So now you know where the resources are and where to find them. Let's go back to the presentation. So as we've talked about, the content is based on the learning framework, and you can find it in the Microsoft Learn profile in the platform, but you can write an exam. This is a global exam. It's a 1-hour exam of roughly 37 to 40 questions, and anybody in the world writes the same exam. It is an English exam, and once you have that qualification, unlike certain other qualifications, it does not expire. Basically, you would be a Microsoft certified educator until the program as we know it is no longer supported, which it's not like if it's going to be around for a while. So you write it once off. Should you buy a voucher, they are in the region of $100 a voucher. If you look on Learn, it's where you can book if you were an individual. So we're very grateful to Microsoft for the sponsorship of the teachers in Africa and South Africa that allow me to give you the opportunity to write. So just so you can understand where the framework comes from, here is the little video. So please let me know if there is no sound.
There is no sound. Was developed after Microsoft and other employers realized that some members of their workforce didn't possess the requisite skills to thrive in their chosen occupation. Microsoft commissioned a study through the Stanford Research Institute to examine what skills our learners need to succeed in the workplace and how are we measuring those skills in our schools. The researchers studied schools in 7 countries, analyzing lesson plans and learners' work, interviewing learners and educators and administrators to find out what skills are we teaching and how are these skills being taught? What skills do our learners need to be prepared for the workforce? And are we teaching those skills? The research group identified 6 important 21st century skills or learning dimensions: knowledge construction, collaboration, real-world problem solving, skilled communication, self-regulation, and ICT for learning. They discovered that although educators were addressing some of these skills in their learning activities, it was often only at a superficial level. For example, while educators were introducing the skill of collaboration, they were not requiring learners to practice the skill in a way that would ensure their future success. Researchers also asked, what do successful schools have in common? They found that educators in the most successful schools were collaborating with their colleagues to design cross-curricular or interdisciplinary lessons. The research team then developed rubrics to help educators better understand 21 CLD curricular goals and redesign learning to develop the vital skills our learners need. These rubrics have been tested internationally and proven to facilitate collegial discussion on lesson design, as well as promote reflective practice among educators.
So as you can see, it comes from a global research, and it is based on what is required by our learners when they enter jobs. Last week, I was talking to my matrics, and we were deciding about when they are retire. And I have a niece and nephew who are in grade R this year, when they would retire. So, and it's pretty scary because we're talking about 2070, 2060s. We won't be around, but the kids that we're teaching in schools nowadays will. So we need to give them the tools and the skills that they need for to learn more. So it's based on 6 rubrics, and they are color coded. You can get them in a Word document as off my website, or they are in the learning in the Learn platform, and each one talks to a specific area that they identified that is a skill that a learner needs to succeed in the 21st century. So we're going to go through each one, being knowledge construction, collaboration, real-world problem solving, skilled communication, ICT for learning, and self-regulation. We're going to go through each one, and I'm going to also give you examples of how they are asked in the exam. I would suggest that you print out the rubrics and you keep them. Sorry, I was just trying to send my husband a message. You can laminate them and put them on a key ring, because then it's quite easy to have in your class on your desk, and you can look through them and refer to them when you need. So knowledge construction is the first one, and I'm a computer teacher, CAT teacher, but the way I learn is to associate images with the things that I'm trying to remember. So I associate construction being with hard hats, the yellow hard hat, and we're trying to build something. We're trying to build knowledge in students. So why is it important? Well, because that is what our classrooms looked like in the 1800s. That is what our classrooms look like in the 21st century, but that is not what the workforce requires. It is linked to the fact that in those days they were using assemblies and building and following a sausage factory, for example, and keep going through the same, and the same technique worked for everybody. Well, so they thought. Nowadays, we're into personalized learning and making sure each learner achieves at their fullest potential. So it is important, not only do they learn and achieve, but that they learn how to do something new with what we're teaching them. My 2 examples is when I went to school, there was a planet that's no longer a planet. It's now a dwarf planet. And 2 years ago, nobody knew what ChatGPT was, well, 18 months ago, let alone generative AI to create images and recreate and write emails for you. So if that can happen in 2 years, or since I've been at school, just multiply that out by the learners that are sitting in your class. So Becky's going to give us an overview of what this rubric is about.
The first dimension we will be exploring together is knowledge construction. When evaluating how I might enhance a learning activity, I like to begin with knowledge construction because it's important to me to look for new ways to deepen my learners' understanding of core curriculum concepts. Sometimes I slip into asking my learners to answer lower level questions like what is, who is, and how much. Typically, these questions have only one right answer, which is easily found with a quick web search. We need to prepare our learners to do more than regurgitate what they read or heard. Instead, our learners should use information they find to construct their own understandings and engage in purposeful knowledge construction. The knowledge construction dimension strives to engage learners in activities that force them to generate ideas and understandings that are new to them. Learners do this through higher level thinking skills like interpretation, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation. A primary goal of this dimension is for knowledge construction to be the main requirement of the learning activity, meaning it is the part of the learning activity that learners should spend most of their time on, and the part educators focus on when assessing understanding. At a deeper level, learners will apply their knowledge in a new context. Requiring learners to use their constructed knowledge in a new way furthers their understanding of core principles, because they must abstract what they've learned and examine it from a new perspective. At its deepest level, knowledge construction activities should be interdisciplinary, requiring learners to make connections across and between multiple disciplines. By engaging our learners in this way, we will be better preparing them to construct knowledge individually and collaboratively, to make meaning and develop deep understandings of this dynamic world in which we live. Now,
so if you think of that, and so my husband responded to the message. So these are cards. I lost my image, so I don't know if you can see them. So this is an infographic that I created based on the information that is in the course and in Becky's video. So there are 4 main big ideas about knowledge construction. The first one, for those who've done Bloom's, studied Bloom's, are matric teachers, will know that this is the top part of Bloom's, where you analyze, synthesize, and evaluate and interpret what you have learned. It is not the what is, who is questions. The second main idea is that it is usually has to be part of the project that is the most time, effort, and marks. So in other words, the learning goal of your project is that you want to construct new knowledge. And then the next big idea is that they must construct it in a new context, in a completely different perspective or in a different situation. And lastly, the top level is interdisciplinary. In other words, there is more than one academic subject involved. So in our school, we offer in grade 9 what we call 21 CLD projects based on this course and certification, as just about all our teachers have done it and passed the exam, and the children choose a module. So for example, I'm going to talk about one that they did last year, which was about protest and protest posters. So as you could think, it was a collaboration between history and art, because all our grade 9s do art and history, and they had to create protest posters based on certain principles for the context in which each group got given. So, for example, they had learnt about the protests in South Africa, the protests of the 60s and 70s, and then the early 1990s. And then they got topics, for example, like fees must fall, and they had to create protest posters using art principles and their knowledge of history with the correct slogans, images of which they did digitally. Obviously, you could tell this is interdisciplinary, but the way the rubric works, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse. So we start at the bottom, and you ask yourself the question is, does the project or unit require knowledge construction? In other words, they are going to create something new. They are going to interpret, analyze, synthesize, or evaluate their information and create something. If you said no, then your project would have level 1 on the knowledge construction rubric. If the answer is yes, and then you have to decide whether it's the main component. In other words, they had to construct something new, which in this case for the posters, yes, they did. And it contained the most time, effort, and marks. Then we say yes, and we move on to the third question. If we said no, it would remain a level 2. So the third question is, are they applying their knowledge in a new context? Of the protest project, yes, because they had learnt about protests in history. They had learnt about art techniques to attract attention, colors, font sizes, that kind of information, and they had to put it all together in some context that they had not explored before. And then lastly, as in this case, it was interdisciplinary. So Microsoft's rubric, they have 2 versions of the rubric. The first version is the Word version, which is also available. There's a tree version underneath, a decision tree, but the version that does words, it basically poses you or the sentences, and it starts with level 1, where it says the activity does not require learners to construct knowledge. Learners can complete the activity by reproducing information or using familiar procedures. Okay, and then it moves on. They do require to construct knowledge, but it is not the main part of the activity. Then level 3 is it is the main requirement, but the learning activity does not require the learners to apply themselves in a new context. And then for level 4, it would be the learning activity's main requirement is knowledge construction, and it does require them to apply their knowledge, but it does not have learning goals in more than one subject. And then obviously, lastly, it does have learning goals in more than one subject. So it is a 5-level rubric. You can score 1 to 5 in knowledge construction. So in a lot of the exam, many of the questions include the knowledge, the different rubrics, or they have a version of it in the questions that you will see later in some of the screenshots, but you do need to be familiar with it. Please note, it is the case of the does not and not being in capital letters, and the main requirements that are in bold are very important. And when you're answering a question, you must be thinking of the rubric as they ask the question. So, like when we tell our learners you're writing matric, and especially if you're doing comprehension, sometimes it's more important to read the pieces underneath that first before you ask the question. Now, in the exam, it does come in sections that all the knowledge construction needs tends to be together, all the collaboration and so on. So this question, which is adapted from the exam, is that you've taught your learners about the water cycle, but you want to create a knowledge construction project, and what would take the project into knowledge construction that makes them apply it in a new context, which is where the rubrics on a keyring are very useful, because I can pop over to it and I can say, well, in a new context means that it is a level 4. So we're not talking interdisciplinary, but they have to construct knowledge in a new context. So in the chat, are there any of these that you think apply in the new context? You can just pop A, B, C, or D. I'll probably, if you give me a second, or the next one we can do. Okay, hopefully now we have it as a poll, which will make it easier for everybody to submit a vote. Which one do you think is knowledge construction? So I'll read through it. Just for those people who are not familiar with Teams, if you're struggling to see, if you change the view to focus on content, you won't see me, you can just hear me, and it will make it easier to see the information. Also, you can, if you have a touch device, zoom in. So the option A is that they use Minecraft to recreate the water cycle. They draw a diagram in PowerPoint to show the water cycle. They interview a local expert in water systems, and then they create an interactive presentation showing how the water cycles through the environment. So now, when you're writing the exam, don't get caught with the tools that they're using, because it's a question, but if you're recreating the water cycle in Minecraft, are you just showing me your knowledge, but in a different, in a program? Is that any different to drawing a diagram in PowerPoint? And then the last one, if you created interactive presentation on showing how the water cycle moves through the environment, is it more than just creating a presentation to give me back what I already know? So if you were looking at the questions that a student asked, would you think that option C gives you the most insight into the fact that if they understood what the water cycle does? Please feel free to put your mic on if you want to say something and it's burning about it. Please, the exams, and these are adapted questions, we don't know ever the actual answers in their exam because it's not disclosed, and you do, when you write the exam, say that it's a non-disclosure agreement that you agree to. So yes, the recording will be shared on the website. Okay, so I would say that there was a case to be argued for C or D, because C, yes, you can't see the question, so you don't know whether they're actually asking about water cycles, which means I would lead more to D, but equally an interactive presentation that just shows you how the water cycle moves through the environment, unless you have specifically talked about, so those people who teach water cycle, so if you've taught the water cycle about the sea and the water coming in and hitting a mountain, so Cape Town, and creating clouds and coming down, and now you ask the students to create an interactive presentation showing how the water cycle moves through their garden, for example, and where would the water come from, and they would have to find the local dam or river that the water could originate from. So then you are asking them in a new context, and do they understand the concept of the water cycle? So because this is adapted, that's why I'll argue it both ways. But just remember that if you're writing the exam, to not do what I'm doing right now and reading more into the question, try and read from what is given there. So what is given there, we don't know. Interviewing could just be, please explain the water system cycle to me. So therefore, the most honest answer to me would be D. Is everybody okay? Thumbs up, sad faces. Everybody okay? So moving along. So here's a second one. This is about social sciences in ancient Egypt. So you have to say yes if it transforms learning into one that involves knowledge construction. So A, the teacher uses AR in lessons. The students use an app to point out an image of something in ancient Egypt. And B, they conduct research in to ancient Egypt, and then they use the research to write dialogue for a play which can be recorded. And then lastly, this teacher shows how to create a timeline and then asks the students to create a timeline using Excel. So what would you suggest is the answer? Any brave person would like to guess which is the yes and which is no? Kerry, yes. B? Okay, they're taking the information about Egypt, but they're writing a dialogue for a play. So Heidi, yes. Domiso, yes. B is the answer, is yes. The other two, they're basically just showing you what they already know, which you told them, and taking their notes and putting it into AR or using Excel. So that's what the decision tree looks like. The way they work is you ask the question, requires knowledge construction. If you say yes, you move on to the next question. If you say no, that's where the score comes from. And knowledge construction has 5 levels. So collaboration, for me, it always reminds me of the dolphins working together in the sea. So for me, it's blue. Why is it important? Well, because every job in the modern world requires people to work together. So we have to teach our learners the skills of working together so that they can collaborate to create new knowledge.
The next dimension we will examine is collaboration. Of all the dimensions, I personally feel collaboration is the most challenging to incorporate in my lesson design, but the most rewarding when it's done right. Let me explain. The lowest level of collaboration.
Sorry, I admitted somebody into the team. And it
It's
stops.
the common practice of learners working in pairs or groups. But simply giving learners a task to complete together does not always mean they will truly collaborate. On more than one occasion, I have seen one child complete all the work that was meant for a larger group. For effective collaboration, learners must share responsibility to develop a common product, design, or response. In other words, they must craft something together. However, there might be cases in which one learner dominates the team and dictates what the group will produce. So, it is important to ensure that learners work together to make substantive decisions that shape the content, process, or product they will submit. Then learners develop the skills to work respectfully and make compromises in the interest of a common goal. At its deepest level, collaboration requires learners to work interdependently. In other words, we must design the learning activity in such a way that each learner's contribution is easily distinguished from the others. At the end of a project, my learners should be able to say, if I hadn't contributed this part, our team would not have achieved its goal. The outcome of a collaborative learning activity is always richer when it's designed to incorporate interdependence, and our learners gain valuable skills in the process. Few jobs today are done in isolation, and if we want our learners to be prepared for the workforce, we need to teach them the indispensable skill of working well with others. The 21 CLD Collaboration Dimension is a wonderful guide to help us teach these skills. Next, let's learn more about this dimension by coding a lesson with the collaboration rubric.
Okay, sorry, I'm just going to change the settings so that the people coming in don't have to be admitted. Okay, sorry for that. So the big ideas are that, yes, people have to work together in a pair or a group. They have to discuss an issue, solve a problem, or create a project. There has to be shared responsibility. So if you're looking on the right at the actual tiered rubric, so yes, there's groups or pairs. Yes, we go to the second question. Is there shared responsibility? In other words, do they own the work and do they mutually responsible for the outcome? So for example, if you're in a group and they are creating a PowerPoint presentation, at the end of the day, there's one presentation that they're all responsible for. Substantive decisions is the next question. So that is about, do they decide together about the content, the process, what it looks like, how they're going to present it. So in other words, they have to collaborate, work together, compromise, discuss. And then the last one, is it interdependent? So in other words, even though that all learners participate for the team to succeed in a PowerPoint presentation, but is there an individual and a group accountability? That is to prevent the one person going home and doing the whole PowerPoint. Because even though it's a group project, did they work together to achieve that? This is what the collaboration rubric looks like, the one with words. And here are the kind of questions that you could be asked. You have to create a learning activity in which your students will be developing a proposal for a company called Sixes and Sevens. Which activity is necessary for students to be working on level 5? So if for those people, so you can pop back. Collaboration level 5 is the fact that the learner's work is interdependent. So therefore, there is group accountability, but there's also individual accountability. So it reads, it's not A, B, C, D. These are the parts of the project. So first of all, the students have roles as the team name based on a list from their teachers. So yes, they work in pairs or groups. So I'm looking at the rubric, and then each team work together to come up with one logo for their product. So yes, there's shared responsibility because there's one logo. And obviously we're going to infer that there's decisions made in coming to one logo. And then it says they work interdependently on the logo, the slogan, and the advertisement, but they discuss the progress as a group. So remember, they must participate for the whole team, and there are individual and group accountability takes it to the level 5. So there is accountability. Individually, you could ask in your rubric who did what, who was responsible for what, and but at the end of the day, they had to work together. So whoever did the advert would need the logo and the slogan. And somebody was telling me about a project today where one child starts the project, and then they create a summary that's what the next child works on. So there's more than one way to do it. You can have a rubric that has a group presentation part, and then a part where each, like the logo gets a mark, and that mark is only given to the person who designed it. One of the best ways, but it does make the marking process take a bit longer, is actually having a discussion with the group and finding out who did what, stopping the presentation and saying, well, who chose the color red, who chose a circle versus a square, and getting them to give you feedback. They can also, of course, do some kind of peer assessment or fill in a grid where they mark what each person did and say whether they contributed to the group. So remember, when you do a project, it's not that we're trying to aim for the top level of every rubric. It's the fact that we've thought through the different skills, and throughout the year or throughout the term, you try and target the different skills. And some projects lend themselves more to knowledge construction, others to this one being collaboration, and so on in the other 4. So a different way of asking is, if you used the rubric and you had to engage in a whole class discussion, and all the students participate, what level would that be? Is in the levels. So if you could look at a rubric, anybody want to guess what level it is? So are they working in pairs or groups? If not, then it is level 1. If the answer was yes, we would be asking with shared responsibility. So to me, they're not working in a group, so that becomes a level 1. The second one is a little bit more complicated, where it asks you, so the students decide to use Office 365 to share files for a research project on an environmental issue. They make assignments to collect the data, and they graph it, and then they incorporate the data into a written report. Finally, they work as a team to create a sway to summarize the results. So I would have said the easy one is yes, they work in a group because it talks about a team. Yes, there's shared responsibility because they put it into a written report, and they create a sway. And then lastly, there is substantive decisions because they obviously have to decide what the data means in order to summarize it. The question, which is not completely answered here, is they keep talking about everybody, so there's no individual part to this. How do you find, yes, you can hold the group accountable, but how do you hold the individual accountable. So there's no team roles. It doesn't talk about the rubric, says one person gets for assignments, one for the report, one for the sway. So those are the kind of things that you have to think of when you're planning a project or assessing a project against the rubric. So of course, the decision tree for collaboration being a level 5 interdependent is the top of that rubric. So the next one we move on to is real world problem solving, and real world is often easy to put it into a context, but the crux of the part is not only is it real world, but are they actually solving a problem? So, and of course, learners learn better when they're doing something that they can understand and that means something directly that involves themselves. This is also one of the most important 21 CLDs because we need them to solve global warming, hunger, poverty, education for all those UN Sustainable Development Goals. But at the same time, we need them to solve simple problems at school or at their home or in South Africa and load shedding.
Now, let's examine the real-world problem-solving dimension. This dimension is extremely popular with learners because it gives purpose to their learning and they experience the relevance of the curriculum they are learning. Authenticity is one of my favorite educational strategies. The first component of the dimension examines whether learners' work involves problem solving. Problem solving happens when learners develop a solution to a problem that is new to them, complete a task that they have not been told how to complete, or design a complex product that meets a set of requirements. To qualify as problem solving, it must be the main component of the learning activity. The learning experience is deeper when learners solve real-world problems. Real-world problems are authentic situations and needs that exist outside of an academic context. Real-world problems have the following characteristics. They are experienced by real people. They have solutions for a specific, plausible audience other than the educator as a grader. They have specific, explicit contexts, and they use actual data if data is needed to solve the problem. At its deepest level, the learning activity involves innovation. Innovation requires putting learners' ideas or solutions into practice in the real world. Innovation also benefits people other than the learner. In other words, the product we task learners to create must have value beyond meeting the requirements of an assignment. Solutions to the most pressing problems in our society will not be found in textbooks. Instead, society needs problem solvers who can confront hard problems in creative and innovative ways and do so as part of a multidisciplinary team. As educators, it is crucial that we design learning activities that help our learners to develop the skills they need to engage in problem solving and become innovative thinkers. Next, learn more about this dimension.
So the big ideas are, does your project or lesson unit require them to solve a challenge, design a product, complete a task, or develop a solution? So the first one has two big ideas, is that it has to be problem solving. And remember, the main requirement is about time, effort, and marks. Then the question is it real world? Is it authentic? Does it experienced by real people? Does it have a specific audience? Does it have a specific context? And do they use actual data? And then lastly, will the learners' ideas or solutions be put into practice in the real world? Is there innovation? So that's what the rubric looks like. And then here is an example of one. The city officials in your community recently announced that the local recycling program is overhauled because the cost of improper waste disposal has been rising each year. There's a lot of confusion in the community about recycling correctly. So that sounds real world. That sounds like there's a problem that they need to solve. And then we read on, you assign your geography class the task of developing a marketing strategy that promotes the new program. Is there innovation? Are they solving a problem? And then they have to create advertising materials that the city can use to educate citizens on how to recycle. The teacher will mark the advertising materials. So there is sort of a audience because we're talking about the citizens, but for me, the teachers told you what the solution is. We need a new marketing strategy that promotes the new program, and you have to create the marketing materials. There's no innovation in it. They are not putting those posters up. If we were talking about them creating, for example, in your school, and the students don't know how to recycle, and you task your class with fixing that, and they come up with a solution of colored bins and posters and videos, to me, that is real world problem solving at a level 4. This is only a rubric that has 4 levels, not 5. So another one is that you have to decide if they are level 4, remembering that a level 4 means it requires innovation. It's got to be real world, and it's got to be problem solving. So if students learn about user experience and they modify the interface of an app, are they creating something innovative? And then if they learn about velocity and acceleration and they follow instructions and they create a block code programming environment to create the program that identifies if the object is motion. If I tell you both of them are no, please give me a thumbs up if you understand why I'm saying they no. If you think that they should be yes, any of them, please just give me a heart or put your hand up. Okay. Please remember, if you have anything question and you don't understand, to say in the chat or switch on your mic. So the next one for me reminds me always of the news. It's skilled communication. If we think of breaking news, there's ticker tapes, there is video, there is somebody talking, there are images, and that is what skilled communication is about. Why do we need to do it? Well, because we need to be able to get our point across, to explain our solutions, and it's part of collaboration is the ability to be able to verbalize and display what you're talking about to get people to buy in.
The next dimension we will be exploring is skilled communication. Communication is the core of human interaction. We are constantly communicating, and we rely on communication to share our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. Communication also deepens learning. Albert Einstein once said that only when we understand something deeply are we able to explain it simply. The skilled communication dimension focuses on the types of communication needed to further this level of understanding. To code as skilled communication, the communication activity must be extended or multimodal. Extended communication is when learners communicate a set of connected ideas rather than just a single thought. Multimodal communication includes more than one type of communication mode or tool. The different elements must work together to produce a stronger message than any one element alone. At a deeper level, learners' communication must state a claim, hypothesis, or conclusion, and then support that thesis with facts or examples. At its deepest level, learners must design their communication for a particular audience. When communicating to a specific audience, learners must select the tools, content, or style with that audience in mind. It is important for learners to be able to communicate clearly and persuasively on a variety of subjects and to different types of audiences. Developing technologies in the 21st century have created new opportunities for communication. And with the proliferation of digital and print media, the need for effective communication is no longer confined to language arts classes. With practice, learners become effective, skilled communicators and contributing members to society. Now,
so here are the big ideas of skilled communication. It's extended or multimodal, so it's communication that represents a set of connected ideas, or it uses more than one type of communication. Hence why I think of a news broadcast having all the different multimodal, and it connects the ideas. The second level, and this is quite it's very different in the kind of rubric, is that you have to ask yourself, is there evidence? So did the learner explain their ideas and support their ideas with facts and examples? Yes, then you can go and ask the question if it's for a particular audience. And yes, again, it gets to a level 4. But if there is no supporting facts or examples that explain their idea, then you still ask, is it for a particular audience? And it carries on to level 3 when you say yes. So there are 2 ways to get to level 3, but only one way to get to level 4. So I understand those people who have to go. Yes, the recording will be up. So that is what the rubric looks like. This one is very different. It's got an or in the level 3. And it's quite small in this, but in this activity, you're a geography teacher who's defining rural, urban, and suburban settlement areas, and they are going to create a PowerPoint, but the instructions, so if you read A, B, C, D, and like I said in the exams, it's important to read to the bottom. So what these choices at the bottom are basically the word descriptions of level 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we can simply say whether we think it's a level 1, 2, 3, or 4. So what the task requires is they work in small groups to find photographs representing rural, urban, and suburban. Then each student writes a paragraph defining the similarities and differences they see in the photos, and then they work together in their groups to explain how the photos and the paragraphs support the definitions of urban, rural, and suburban. And lastly, they create a video explaining different settlement areas to younger learners. So if we go, is it extended or multimodal? Yes, because they are creating a video explaining the different settlement. Yes, is there supporting evidence? They have researched themselves based on the definitions. They've looked at photos and come to their own conclusions. And lastly, yes, there is a particular audience because they were talking about younger learners. So this would be a level 4. Sorry. Then here is another option. So you're in an art, the students in the art class are developing basic painting skills. The students display the paintings at the end of term in the art exhibition. So what would you need to do to transform it into a level 4? So you say yes if it facilitates level 4, otherwise no. So remember, level 4 means that is it for a particular audience? So they must attend the art exhibition and display their artwork, and they must organize an auction to sell their artworks. The students photograph the painting and publish it on a website. The proceeds of the auction are donated to charity. So there's another important piece. There is often extra information that you don't really need to use. So for me, there is no direct, explicit that talks about who the specific audience is. So we're not talking about is it the parents? Is it anything more information? The fact that they may be answering questions, you could say to a form is multimoded or extended, but certainly on the second one where they just put a photo, there's no second or extended ideas, and there's no evidence, supporting evidence of why they did what they did. So I would have said no to both of them. So that is what the rubric or decision tree looks like. And the next one reminds me always of a robot, or the red and green man on the robot, or the orange caution. It's about self-regulation and how they learner plans what they do, just like being part of knowing the rules of the road. So it's important because in the big wide world, there are no teachers that keep you on task and keep you doing what you're supposed to be doing. Most of the time, you're left to the devices of having to create or the work product for a boss who is just going to look at the end result. So it's very important that they learn to self-regulate, to plan, and to work to achieve a goal.
The next dimension we will be exploring is self-regulation. At the deepest levels of the dimensions we have studied so far, learners are required to create products or presentations that take time to develop. The self-regulation dimension helps learners by developing the skills necessary to plan their work, design products and solutions, accept feedback, and engage in a process of improvement both individually and as part of a group. Self-regulation is part of executive function, which Harvard University defines as a set of skills critical to the success of every learner. For a learning activity to meet self-regulation requirements, learners must spend a substantive amount of time on the activity and receive clear learning goals and grading criteria. At a deeper level, learners need to plan their work over time while considering the learning criteria. Planning their own work may involve deciding how they will complete the tasks, when they will complete each step, who will complete each part of the work, and where it will be done, such as home or school. At the deepest level of this dimension, learners must receive effective feedback that tells them precisely what they are doing well and offers specific guidance directly connected to the learning goals and success criteria. Learners must also revise their work based on that feedback to improve it before it is finalized. This revision process helps the learning process by promoting reflection with the receipt of feedback and planning via specific guidance on next steps. Today's workforce requires self-regulated thinkers with high levels of executive function. Employees who can take responsibility for their lives, work, and learning will be more marketable and able to thrive in a competitive job economy. These skills do not always come naturally, and it is therefore our job as educators to prepare our learners with a variety of activities to develop this all-important skill. So
the big ideas are, is it a long-term activity? So in other words, it takes more than just one lesson. Do they have the learning goals up front? In other words, the rubrics. In other words, they can see where they have to go, where the marks are going, and what they need to do to be successful. Then the other two are, is there planning, how, when, who, and where? And lastly, there has to be the opportunity for the student or the learner to revise and after feedback. In other words, you tell them what they need to do to be more successful, and they have the opportunity to do that. That's one of the things we don't often have the time for in class. With certain matric projects like my PAT, it is built into the process, and it's a very good process to reflect, get feedback, and then have the opportunity to revise. So that's what the rubric looks like. The kind of question is who can provide feedback? Well, not only the teacher, but so could fellow students, learners. If you've got the learning goals, actually anybody can read the rubric and decide and let them know if they need to do something to make it better. And the feedback can be used to revise. Then, which two of these statements demonstrate self-regulation skills? So the options are: students are skilled in software needed for the project. They break down the task into smaller subtasks and determine how to divide the work. They can obtain feedback and make revisions. They are part of a target group for advertising, and they work in teams comprised of marketing and graphic design students. So the two skills that they need to demonstrate self-regulation is that they divide it into smaller tasks, and they decide who does what, and they get feedback and make revisions as required. So that's what the decision tree looks like. And I saw the question. I'm going to explain about the vouchers in the next few minutes. We're just going to do the last learning area. So the last rubric is ICT for learning. It kind of encompasses all the ones before, especially knowledge construction, and it is the one that refers to the tools. None of the rest refer to the use of ICT or basically digital tools for learning. And why? Because that is the world we live in, where AR and VR are all part of reality. AI, generative AI, Copilot, creating images. It's the world that the students are definitely going into, and we can't even comprehend 2050 and beyond.
the last dimension we will examine is ICT for learning. ICT encompasses a powerful range of digital tools, both hardware and software, that promotes and supports all the other 21 CLD dimensions. The ICT for learning dimension focuses on how ICT impacts and enhances learning. To code as ICT for learning, learners must have the opportunity to use ICT to complete all or part of the learning activity. At a deeper level, learners' use of ICT must support their knowledge construction. As I shared in a previous video, knowledge construction occurs when learners use interpretation, analysis, synthesis, and evaluation to generate new understandings and ideas. When the knowledge construction activities would be impossible or impractical to complete without the use of ICT, the learning becomes even deeper. At the deepest level, learners are designers of ICT products for others to use. During the design process, learners must attend to the needs and preferences of their intended audience. Through these activities, we will be training our learners to be analytical thinkers, as well as creators of information and ideas, thanks to the wide array of digital tools available to them. ICT makes it possible for us to engage our learners in new and innovative ways as never before. ICT also allows learners to connect with a wider network of peers and experts. This is invaluable because only when we engage with others do we truly begin to understand ourselves and the world we live in. So, let's dive deeper into this wonderful dimension by coding.
So the big ideas is the first question, does it require or can they use ICT to complete all or part of the activity? The second question is, does it support knowledge construction? So in other words, does whatever the tool is help them come to knowledge, new knowledge in a new context? Then is it required? In other words, would they have not got there without the use of the tool? So the tool impacts the knowledge construction in the fact that you would never have got to that level without it. And lastly, are they designers of ICT products that a real audience in the real world could use? So that's what the rubric looks like. And an example is you would divide, looking at these activities, decide whether they're level 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. It once again is a 5-level rubric. And if they work together to design a program using make code block-based programming for a primary school math student. Yes, there's ICT because it's make code. Yes, does it support the knowledge construction? Yes. Are they creating, would they have got to that same knowledge without it? No, because they're having to redo it for primary school students. And lastly, they're designing an ICT product. If they take notes in OneNote, or they follow steps to a tutorial, or they watch a video on how computer programmers solve problems, or those are not something that is supporting knowledge construction. Yes, it requires ICT. Yes, the OneNote supports knowledge construction because they're making notes, but they don't necessarily, you could get that with any kind of note-taking activity. And watching videos or practicing is just reinforcing repetitive or just learning more information. The last one, where they investigate loops by debugging code, there is no product, but yes, in order to debug somebody else's code, you have to use ICT. It is knowledge construction because you have to work out what's wrong with the code, and you wouldn't have achieved it without the ICT. So that is what the decision tree looks like for that learning rubric. And here's the summary.
We made it! You've come so far, and we've learned so much together. Together with our showcase educators from around the world, we've discovered how research-based principles are put into practice and how lives are changed through the dimensions of 21st century learning. I'm proud of you for preparing our learners for life in the 21st century. 21CLD helps us incorporate a range of skills into our learning activities, in addition to core subject matter knowledge, so our young people will know how to apply their core knowledge in real-world situations. As I briefly recap each dimension, I encourage you to think about your own learners and how each dimension applies to them. Because your learners in your area of the world have varying needs, consider your demographic before you begin. Then, together, We can design learning opportunities to address those needs. When considering knowledge construction, we need to ask ourselves, will my learners be required to construct and apply knowledge? And will that knowledge be interdisciplinary? When considering collaboration, will my learners share responsibility and make substantive decisions with others? Will their work be interdependent? When it comes to real-world problem solving, we ask, does the learning activity require the solution of authentic, real-world problems? And will those solutions be implemented in the real world? If considering skilled communication, we reflect, will my learners communicate their thoughts and ideas on a concept or issue? And will that communication be supported with evidence and designed with a particular audience in mind? When contemplating self-regulation, is this activity long-term? And will my learners plan and monitor their own work, as well as make revisions based on feedback or self-assessment? And finally, when evaluating ICT for learning, we ask, will ICT be necessary for learners in their knowledge construction? Will learners be designers of an ICT product for a real audience? Remember, you can focus on one skill or a few at a time. The decision is entirely yours when it comes to your learners' needs and your instructional goals.
So that is the course as it is given in the Learn platform. In the Learn platform, there are extra pages that talk to the tools that are associated with each learning outcome. Each rubric. And then they do have what they refer to as anchor lessons, where they give you a story and then you decide, much like all these questions before, what level per whichever rubric it is. So, and I suggest you go through that if you're going to prepare for the exam. So the exam is written, if you write through me, via Certiport. We are able to offer an online version, which is Certiport's at-home process. The first thing, if you look, that is the exam, the outline. It all fits in to what is given in the course. You can see the learning outcomes that are required. Then it based on these, and most often this is the rubric version that is given in the test when it's given a version, a rubric that you can refer to. So it's very important, I suggest, to print this out and work through it and be completely familiar with it. It is not an exercise in writing out the rubrics. You don't get to define substantive or what knowledge construction is. It is completely about applying. There is a small section about tools, but it is not a very big section, and it's more about if you were doing a presentation, you would use PowerPoint. If you were making personalized letters, you would use Word mail merge. It is not a detailed how do you or which icon do you click on, and there is none of that done. If you want to do that kind of exam, it's a Microsoft Office exam. So you need to go to Certiport before you write the exam. You need to create an account and you need to write it down, because when we do them online, it creates a secure browser that doesn't have autofill. So if you don't know your username and password, you can't get past step 1. So you need to have created an account. You need to say you're an educator in that account, that you work in an educational institution, otherwise the vouchers don't work. And you need to have written down your username and password. It is not an email username. In the exam, you after putting your username and password in, you get to the place where you have to use a voucher. The vouchers are kindly sponsored by Microsoft, and basically around $100 a voucher. So you have to say type in the voucher code that I give you in the session into that enter a voucher number, and then you have to wait for me as the proctor to verify this person's ID, and I put my username and password. So the way it works when you register for one, it's actually a Teams meeting because we connect together at the beginning. I give you a voucher, I verify who you are and where you're writing, and then once you log on to the actual secure browser, it will switch off the Teams meeting. So if you happen to have a phone that you can connect on, it's easier. But I also share my cell phone number for WhatsApp or last minute calls if we get stuck. Please, it is important that you don't, for example, if you click past the voucher payment today, then it assumes the exam's not going to be paid for, so you can't do it. Also, there is a big, at the top here, you can sort of see it, closed session. If you click that, for example, if you don't have your username and password, sometimes if it's taken too long, you can't get in because this whole cloud does have a timeline to it. Also, if there are 40 of you writing, it does take me a while to get to everybody to put my username and password, but each test, the time actually only starts when you actually press start the exam. So as you've seen through much, this is what screen questions are. There are, well, the last time we wrote this, which was last year, I'll get back to you in a week when I see the first ones. There were 3 sections. When you go from one section to the next, you cannot go back. One section, and you don't always get them in the same order, is like this bottom left, where it's a case study. So you get the story, the description of the students, the learning and teaching environment, the rubrics, the learning activities, and there were 3 questions based on this case study. Sometimes there are 4, and then there are usually 2 case studies, and then a big bank of questions where each question is kind of standalone. There's sometimes the rubric on the top, a written out version like you can see in the top right, and then there's questions at the bottom, either multiple choice or yes or no, and sometimes you have to drag and drop, for example, the tool into which communication project problem, which one of the tools they will use. That's the level of tool acknowledgement. As soon as you are finished, and please make sure when you're doing this that you follow my instruction. I don't have a picture. There is a chat in the actual secure portal where you can chat to me and I can chat to you, because if you close without saying upload your results, it's not upload. It's you've got to say not press close session, but at the end say you have finished your exam. Your result comes out immediately. You need 700 of the 1,000 score marks available, but it tells you the percentage of each section, and it gives you your overall pass. Then if you have a Learn profile or and haven't done this course, if you put the code in by going to view your profile, redeem code, you can put N8YL4. I'm going to paste it in the chat because I'm going to show you where to go. So there's the code. So in your Microsoft Learn platform, so when you're logged in, you go to learn.microsoft.com. Most of you, if you don't have a picture, will have initials. You go to profile, you click on achievements, and right at the top it says redeem your code now. And when you click on that, you type in that code. If you haven't got a profile now, just write it down and then you can put it in later. What it does is it will give you, if I go to learning paths, you won't see mine. It will give you the 21st century learning design trophy, and it will give you all the badges for the different modules, because there's a badge attached to each one.